What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the Bluffton Tech Finding Muskrats Dynasty here on EA College Football 25. And we find ourselves with a very special episode as we find ourselves in the off-season here already, here in year number 1. And while that 1-11 record is one of the worst records in all of college football this year, that being said, this is a team that slowly got better as the year went on, and hopefully we can build some positive momentum as we go into year number 2 of this series. So hope you guys are excited for this episode, man. It's got a lot to go over, including what we have in terms of some possible promotion and relegation going down. So I hope you guys are excited for this particular episode, man, because I certainly am. If you are, make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you happen to be brand new to the channel. And first, let's go ahead and jump into the stats here that we had here in year number 1. Now, there's no secret this year that offensively, this was an ugly year for us on the offensive side of the ball. DJ Armstrong was our starting quarterback for much of the year, and while he showed some spurts here or there, I mean, 8 touchdowns and 22 interceptions is simply not acceptable. But to be fair to him, this was a game in which we truly did struggle to get any sort of movement offensively, and to be frank with you, Heisman is on a whole nother level than what you experienced in NCAA 14, so there was definitely an adjustment period for sure. We got better as the year has gone on, but with that said, we also don't have the chance to really go about working on like making ourselves great, like so to say, right? So DJ Armstrong, while he took those lumps, he did his best to take those lumps in stride. 8 touchdowns and 22 interceptions is hard to watch. Tyler Olsen did get into that game a handful of times for mop-up duty when we were getting blown out, and he was okay as a senior. 15 for 23, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He will be graduating this year, though, so there's going to be a battle at least between Carl Navarro and JoJo Thompson to see who ends up being that backup quarterback this upcoming season. If JoJo Thompson surpasses Carl Navarro, I could absolutely see Navarro entering the transfer portal because he's going to be redshirted here. I would imagine he'll be a junior redshirt, while JoJo Thompson will have 4 years of eligibility remaining. Now, with that being said, running the ball was a little bit better for us, and I think we need to do a better job of making sure that we get Will Peoples opportunities to really make his presence felt. He was a little bit of a bright spot for us. He had over 500 yards rushing on the year, which, given our offensive line and how much we struggled on the offensive line, I'll definitely take that as a victory for sure. Although he did not find the end zone and fumbled the ball multiple times this year, but not as bad as DJ Armstrong, who did also not only have all those interceptions, he did have those 5 fumbles as well. He ended up with 182 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. A couple of other guys did manage to find the end zone multiple times throughout the year. Keontae Tyson found the end zone 3 times on the ground. And then Cameron Teague, the sophomore tailback, also was able to score a couple of times, with Julius Buford Jr. and Tavion Grant able to find the end zone once as well somehow. Now, for receiving the ball, I think it's very clear that we could have a very good wide receiver on our hands. This is a guy that played higher than a 67 overall. 55 catches, 660 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, dude came and balled out for us, man. Like, for a freshman to play with the lack of talent that has been around him, Chris Gentry really did, spark my interest for sure. I can't wait to see how he grows moving forward. He definitely was a deep threat for us this season for sure. Javion Foreman did end up with the most touchdowns on the team, though. He had 3 touchdowns and was a good compliment to Chris Gentry. We should have him back for his senior year because he did have over 500 yards receiving. Third reading receiver was Scott McQuarrie, but could not find the end zone with him. But a few other guys did find the end zone, even with our lack of production through the air. Demetrius Williamson, Scooter Page, Will Peoples Jr. Through the air, and then Javon Moore all found the end zone, with CJ Peaks actually finding the end zone multiple times. He was someone that, yes, didn't really get to play. He did play 100 snaps this season, but turned 2 of those 5 catches into touchdowns, so I can't even be mad about it. One thing that I was pleasantly surprised about this season, though, was our defense. While our defense wasn't always consistently good, our defense was, I thought, better than expected. And that's in spite of the fact that we could still get better as we continue to add talent onto this team. Nash Burte did end up leading the team with nearly 100 tackles this season, and he wasn't too far behind from the junior in Xavier Wilson. Xavier Wilson was able to get 94 total tackles. Chase Freeman, our star linebacker, he ends up getting 85 total tackles. And I imagine Nash Burte will be the defensive captain of this team as we get into year number 2. Porter Lindstrid also coming in with 84 total tackles on the season as well. However, one thing that I want to get better at as we continue to move through this series is getting more consistent pressure from the quarterback. We didn't have anyone with 5 sacks this season, but the closest person to that was Tajay Coles. While Tajay Coles was okay, the fact that he led the team in sacks was concerning, and a big reason why we weren't the most consistent defensively. Nash Burte and Jarian Love were also able to get multiple sacks, as was Xavier Wilson. But these are the only 4 guys that had more than 1 sack this season, although plenty of other people were able to get a chance to hit the quarterback at any given point. Now, as the year did go on, though, we did a better job of forcing turnovers. Jaden Bowens led the team this year, 4 interceptions, but he's going to be graduating this year, so going to need some of these younger guys to step up and be difference makers in our secondary. Nico Solomon was not too far behind with a few, and then the junior Terrell Pace also happened to have an interception as well. And then for forced fumbles, many different guys did end up having forced fumbles this year, although it seems like for the majority of the fumbles that we forced, we weren't really able to recover them, although Deshaun Leaks was able to get a couple, as was Jarian Love. And of course, something that I certainly want to get better at as we get through this series is I want to be better at kicking. I want to definitely get better at kicking because we only end up being 2-8. And Ian Wells, while that 66 overall isn't very good, at the same time, I definitely didn't do ourselves any favors at all. So I'm hoping that we can get better with the kicking. Tommy White is on this roster, so he'll be looking to be our kicker starting next year, but maybe it's one of those things where maybe I let Matthew York handle more of the kicking duties in his senior year. Seems like he's more capable of completing that task. But this was how our schedule was throughout the course of the year, and of course for the first 11 games of the year, we ended up having those those losses. But there was a handful of times where we were kind of close to winning. Old Dominion, we only lost that game by a couple of points. Northern Illinois was an 11-point difference. Toledo was, not a blowout either. Central Michigan was the closest that we were to winning before our final game of the season. And then, of course, the last game of the year, where we Iowa footballed our way to our first win in program history. And that's a big deal because even though we'll probably lose that half star, go to a 1-star at the end of the year, at the same time, though, we do at least avoid getting kicked out of the MAC, and we'll get the benefit of playing in the MAC conference here in year number 2. But something that I've found out as we've gone through this, through this season is, definitely utilize that no huddle a little bit more. And I think we found more success once we made that adjustment because, oh man, we were absolutely down horrendous for most of the season. But as things went on, we slowly got better, in my opinion. Now, we got through to the conference championship weekend, though, and we continue to see some verbal commits onto our team. Tremaine Busby, for example, the 2-star out of Lakewood, Ohio, he ends up signing with the team. And then we're in the top 5 for some of these other guys. as it looks like we might have some people end up transferring, but that's just the realities of college football. But yeah, we're in the running for some of these other guys as well. Chandler Moore, who is a defensive end from Groveport, Ohio, is someone that I'm the most excited about. Hopefully we can get him on some off-season visits. And then Cordell Torrance, a 2-star from Powell, and then a 2-star JUCO guy that's originally from the Nasty Natty, could really help us reinforce things in the trenches, because I did mention, hey, I want to get better in the trenches this upcoming season, and so far we're accomplishing just that. But not only were we trying to avoid relegation in our final regular season game, but the same thing was happening with Army as well. Army started the season 0-11. They needed to win against Navy, and they actually get it. So Army is going to be allowed to stay in the American Conference because of that. They narrowly miss out on being removed from the American completely. However, with that being said, there is some teams that are going to have to experience the downfalls of the realignments in terms of promotion and relegation. Starting with the ACC, the Duke Blue Devils had not only the worst tied with the worst conference record with Georgia Tech and Wake Forest, but Duke had the worst record of the all, finishing with just one win, which they also had to get in the last week of the season as well. So Duke is going to be relegated down to the American. The Arizona Wildcats are also going to have the worst conference record in the Big 12, so they will be moved down to the Conference USA in season number 2. For the Big 10, there was a freeway tie between Northwestern, Michigan State, and Rutgers, but Michigan State is going to get the axe because they had the worst overall record at 3-9, while Northwestern and Rutgers won one more game, so Michigan State will move down to the MAC next season. The Pac-12 actually only has 8 teams, so for this year, 2 teams from the Mountain West are going to be promoted. It's going to be the 2 teams that are going to the Mountain West Championship game. That's Boise State and Fresno State that will get the invitation to join the Pac-12. And then finally, the SEC, there was a 2-way tie between Mississippi State and Florida, but Mississippi State is going to ultimately finish in last place because they did have a worse overall record than the Florida Gators. Therefore, the Mississippi State Bulldogs will be moving down to the Sun Belt. But this is the time of year where we really sit down and really try to think about what do we want to do in terms of staff changes. I do want to keep Mike Robinson on the staff because he is a scheme guru, and that could certainly help us out on Saturdays in terms of how well he did with coaching up the defense this year. But with that being said, David Morales, I think we are going to end up firing, not because our offense was absolutely terrible, really Iowa level of bad from the offensive side of the ball, but we end up doing similar things. I'm a recruiter type. He's a recruiting type as well. So I'm actually going to fire David Morales in order to try and find a more well-rounded staff. So we will need to find an offensive coordinator. But while we were moving through our regular season, or at least the end of the regular season, we did get some more coaching upgrades because we got moved up to a level 8. And so we did go with the receiving game, get the always be recruited, especially since we are in a recruiting battle with Akron that I definitely want to bring in for a 2-star. That would be a good fit for our program. And then I also decided to get the first upgrade for secondary for defensive backs, taking less time to fully scout. I think that could truly help us as well in terms of being more athletic as a program. Now, in terms of how things shook out for the conference championships, so to get things started here, we got the Conference USA, and the Conference USA champion is going to be Liberty. They beat Mid-Tennessee State 35-28, so Liberty will be promoted up to the Big 12. Utah is going to beat Oklahoma State 49-27, so they'll get an automatic bid into the college football playoff, it looks like. In the MAC, Kent State was in a close one with Toledo, but Toledo is going to win it out 35-30, and so Toledo will be good enough to be promoted to the Big Ten because of his performance. Meanwhile, Texas State, they were looking good for most of the season, but then collapsed late. They end up losing to South Alabama in the Sun Belt Championship game, and so South Alabama will move up to the SEC because of that. In the American, meanwhile, what we see in the American is that Tulane ends up beating Eastern Carolina 34-7, so Tulane will now become a part of the ACC. Boise State wins 34-26, so Boise State will end up being ranked in the top 25 going into bowl season. Georgia ends up beating Texas 24-21. The Texas Longhorns still somehow being ranked, even though they're 7-6. In the ACC, meanwhile, Virginia Tech beats Clemson 45-39, which means Virginia Tech does end up getting one of those berths into the quarterfinals automatically. And then Michigan is able to beat Nebraska 27-19. The Wolverines will be able to secure their 10th win of the season because of that. And so because of all of those results that you saw, this is what the college football playoff bracket is going to be. We'll revisit who ends up winning the national championship later, but because we did see the return of the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 has came back, we will end up seeing no group of 5 team make it into the college football playoff this year. Your number 1 team ends up being Virginia Tech, but it looks like everybody that made it into the playoff did suffer at least 2 losses here in your number 1. So our offensive coordinator search gets started here, and these were the options that we had at our disposal. And what I really wanted to look at was who could really fill some of the gaps that we have as a coaching staff already. And I looked at 2 different candidates. Wyatt Kaufman, he runs a spread, and he has the Pennsylvania pipeline. He is known as a motivator, and he's someone that can be a culture setter who is strong in player development. Which is something that we do have a weakness in because we did focus on recruiting as much as we did, trying to get that infusion of talent into the program. And then what we also looked at as well is we looked at Marquise Stockton. He has the South Florida pipeline. Now, I'm not as sure if we'll be able to get him because he does have multiple head coaching offers from Ohio, Northern Illinois, as well as Kennesaw State. But Marquise Stockton is also someone that has that motivator pipeline. So I think because Marquise Stockton has the more interesting pipeline, I think his would be more helpful because Florida does have a higher level of talent than the state of Pennsylvania, in my opinion. I'm going to offer Marquise Stockton first, and if it doesn't work out for us, then we'll try to go for Wyatt Kaufman. But we do have early signing day coming around, and in our early signing day, we ended up doing pretty well, having some guys officially sign that letter of intent. Kane Boschicek is one of them. He's a 3-star safety from Lewis Center. He could possibly compete for playing time, as could this elusive running back, Ron John. He's listed as an athlete. He's likely actually a running back. But Ross John could provide some depth behind Will Peoples because Will People did have a ton of depth behind him. Still working on Zach Oben. It looks like we're going to be in a battle with Arkansas, which, is going to challenge us, but so far we do have an advantage. Slade Jaeger, he's a middle linebacker, a field general type. Really excited about him because he's a gem as well. So he's a 4-star caliber player. So going to be a good compliment for Nash Burte in our linebacking core. George Everson, who's a JUCO from Ohio, he signs with us as well. And then here's our recruiting battles with Steven Brantz and Kai WQ, which we're actually in a battle with Illinois against. Illinois does have a better pipeline grade, but we do have the advantage. Just got to get on that recruit visit first. Kyle Gaddis is a bust, so he is still a 2-star caliber player at quarterback. Likely would end up being the backup to DJ Armstrong. Chandler Moore is someone that we're monitoring as well. Have a pretty good lead against everybody else. Ray Ellington does sign with our team as well. A physical receiver from Cincinnati. Looking forward to see what he could bring to the table. Looks like he's a 3-star caliber player. Chad Eaton, however, can't say the same thing. The JUCO is going to be only like a 2-star level player at most, which kind of sucks, but is what it is. He could still be a developmental player within our program. Here's a few other guys that we're going after. Brennan Tubbs is a guard from Columbus. Marquise Bringham's is a tackle from Dayton, Ohio. And Cordell Torrance is a 2-star power rusher, plays on the defensive line, and is also from Powell. So Powell getting a little bit of love here on our recruiting board for sure. Did end up signing a couple of other middle linebackers, Tremaine Ballsby and Khalil Muma. Also end up signing, could be developmental players. Whereas this one could be someone that we're probably going to lose out on. Braden Leverford, I'm probably going to remove him from the board, to be honest. Thought I could try to close the gap here a little bit, but looks like Akron is going to get this guy from Pickerington, Ohio. So we're going to have to look for another wide receiver, because I do want to make sure that in terms of my strategy for recruiting, not only do we meet needs, but what could potentially be needs next year as well. That's kind of been my strategy in terms of recruiting. Johnny Chansey is a 2-star linebacker, which I'm pretty sure we're going to end up getting, as will Logan McNichols, who is a JUCO defensive tackle. And then here's some of the other guys that we signed. Bryce Henning, who's a running back. Larry Hasselbach, listed as an athlete, probably is more of a defensive lineman or a linebacker. Not quite sure what he is. Could be definitely a defensive player, probably a linebacker or maybe a safety, but it's hard to say. And then a few 1-star dart throws in Jermaine Rudder, Jarius Chibuka, and Jamichael Ruffin, just to provide us with some extra bodies to work with. But overall, love where we are at in terms of our National Signing Day. We'll still have the actual signing day later on in the off season, but so far we haven't even signed a big class. You know, we have one of the smaller classes in the MAC, and yet we're the second best recruiting class in the conference. We're sitting right now at a solid 69. So we move on to a new week of the Bulls season, and Marquis Stockton accepts our offer. So we'll have a little bit more of a well-rounded staff here in year number 2. Marquis Stockton is going to provide us with some motivation to help with culture building on this team. And not to mention, we get that South Florida pipeline as well, which is going to be extremely helpful for us if we want to go down to the state of Florida to recruit some of these guys. Alright, so we move through the entirety of Bulls season, and it looks like the Clemson Tigers are going to win the national championship here in year number 1. And it was actually interesting to see how well the ACC was. 3 of the 4 semifinalists ended up being from the ACC. The only exception being Michigan, who ends up losing to Clemson 35-27 in that quarterfinal that happened in the Orange Bowl. As for your award winners completely looking around the country, we do have Kyron Drones did end up winning the Heisman Trophy. He is a junior quarterback from Virginia Tech. For your other award winners, we had Kyron Jones also winning the Player of the Year award. Head Coach of the Year ends up going to Charles Smith, the head coach over at NC State. And NC State actually did make it to the national championship game this year. Best quarterback also goes to Kyron Jones, which is no surprise because he did end up winning the Heisman. Best defensive player goes to Mason Graham. He's the junior defensive tackle at Michigan. Best defensive back is going to go to Conrad Hussey, the sophomore out of Sunrise, Florida, playing for the Florida State Seminoles. We do have Xavier Wilson on this list, though. He does make it into the top 5, and we're very happy that he happens to be a part of our team. Best running back does end up going to Ollie Gordon II, the junior from Oklahoma State. Best receiver goes to Javon Ivory, the senior out of South Alabama. One of the few group of 5 players on this list. He was actually a finalist for the Heisman Trophy as well. As for the Lombardi Award, that goes to Mason Graham. That goes to the best defensive lineman. Not surprised because I believe he got best defensive player awards as well. The Unitas Golden Arm Award goes to Shadir Sanders, the senior out of Colorado, and one of the highest rated quarterbacks that was in the game. Thankful that I did not have to go up against him this season, because he would have cooked us for sure. As for best defensive end, we're going to give that to Ashton Gelati, the senior out of Louisville. Best interior lineman on the offensive side of the ball is going to go to Jonah Monheim, the senior redshirt out of USC. Best tight end goes to Brand Kuofe, the senior redshirt out of Katy, Texas, playing for the Utah Utes. As for the Boils, it goes to the best assistant coach, and that's going to be provided to Kim Cotrullo, who is from NC State, and he's an offensive coordinator with the alma mater of Florida International. Best linebacker goes to Kane Madano, the senior redshirt out of UCLA. Best center also going to Jonah Monheim as well. The Lou Groza goes to Jonah Domas out of Boise State, born and raised in Idaho as well. Best punter goes to Aiden Slonson out of Tampa, Florida, and was part of that national championship Clemson team. Best returner going to Kevin Concepcion, the sophomore out of Charlotte. I believe he transferred from a different school, so that was a good pickup. And that's going to round out your player awards. So I'm curious to see if we end up, we probably won't have any All-Americans on this list, but I'll be interested to see if we had anyone that made it onto the MAC squad. So no first team All-Americans, which I'm not surprised about, because we are in fact a 1-11 team, and we didn't see anybody make it onto the second team All-American list. However, we'll go ahead and check out the MAC real quick to see if we have any better luck. And for the first teams, guys, like in the MAC, we didn't have any first team all MAC players, it seems like, but for second team, maybe that could be a little bit of a different story. Would love to see at least one second team player, but it looks like that is not going to happen, except, hang on now, we do have a couple here. Porter Winstrid gets on, the strong safety from Rhode Island, does get named to the second team MAC as a freshman, and so does our punter Matthew York, which I'm not surprised about, because, well, you know, we did have to punt the ball a whole lot here in year number one. Want to see if we have any freshmen on here, and we do have a couple freshmen that did end up shining. Chris Gentry ended up on here, as did CJ Peaks, so at least, you know, we have that to hang our hat on. Nash Burte also got in for the freshmen, so we had 4 freshman all-conference players, so at least we can say the future is bright. But that being said, it just goes to show that we have some work to do, but it seems like we have a foundation that we can build upon here in future seasons. So as we continue to progress through the offseason, we do continue to see updates on recruiting, and Marquise Bigham's a 2-star tackle that we've been trying to recruit, does end up verbally committing to our team, which we're pretty excited about. Another piece that we can have for our offensive line specifically. The big thing is trying to keep some of these decent players that are on our roster, keep them from actually entering the transfer portal, because it does seem like we do have quite a few guys that are going to be entering into the transfer portal, although it looks like we will not have any sort of chance to persuade these guys. So that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, because we're going to lose 2 pretty good offensive linemen. Kalen Franklin and Max McClure are both going to be entering in the transfer portal. We have no shot in convincing them otherwise. And then we're also going to lose out on Keontae Tyson. Keontae Tyson was someone that did end up finding the end zone like quite a few times this year, alongside Jordan Underwood, which I honestly don't remember him. And then Kobe Garland, who started on our defensive line as well this year. We are not going to be able to persuade him at all. So losing a few guys through the portal, that's definitely going to be a tough pill to swallow. But let's check out some of these other notable players that are leaving. Demetrius Williamson, he's going to be graduating alongside Jalen McDonald, another offensive lineman that did end up starting for us this season. Plus, we also have one of our stars of the defense, Chase Freeman. He's also going to graduate this year with Jaden Bowie, who did have the had the most interceptions on the team here in year number 1. And to top it all off, we do have to lose a quality backup quarterback in Tyler Olsen as well. But I'm really concerned about this offensive line here going into year number 2. And a big reason for that is we're going to have to find a way to replace 3 out of our 5 offensive linemen. Hopefully this freshman class can step up, and I'm hoping that we can find a way to try and make something shake here in terms of finding some contributors through the transfer portal as well. But perhaps one of those offensive linemen that could contribute for us right away is this 3-star tackle and Kyle Crew. He's from St. Louis, Missouri. We were battling with Illinois, and we were able to find a way to beat Illinois for this recruiting battle, which is fantastic news for us. Glad that we were able to find a way to get him to come to Bluffton Tech, and so he could be someone, if he lives up to that 3-star potential, someone that could contribute to our team right away. Now, at this point of the offseason, we still had a couple of most of the positions that we still need at this point. There wasn't really anyone good that we could go after in the transfer portal, but there was a couple guys in the transfer portal that certainly gathered my attention. Brandon Vernon is a big one. He's a 3-star listed as a 3-star in the transfer portal. He previously was playing with Notre Dame. He's right here in the state of Ohio, and the thing that he's looking for is playing time. And with the loss of one of our defensive linemen in the transfer portal, we would certainly have no issue at all having Brandon Vernon end up playing for our team as a even though he is going to be coming in, looks like, as a sophomore, so he would probably have like 3 years of eligibility left. I think it would be a really good fit for our team. And then the other player that I wanted to go after is this 2-star outside linebacker who previously played with UMass. Again, looking for someone that has that unique playing style. I think Miles Turner could also be a good fit. Looks like he's mainly looking at North Carolina, but I think we could sneak in here and give him the attention that he needs, or at least attempt to get his attention. Alright, so making it through the first week of off-season recruiting, we do end up getting a verbal commitment from Brennan Tubbs, who's a guard out of Columbus, Ohio. We also signed 3-star defensive end Chandler Amore. Trevor Amore really going to help provide reinforcements in the trenches, as will the 2-star Cordell Torrance out of Powell, Ohio, plus 2-star defensive tackle Logan McNichols. So a good start here in recruiting here as we end up getting 4 of the guys on our board. It's just a matter of trying to make sure that we try to get some of these other guys that are on our list. We are in some close battles with Zach Obed with Arkansas, passing us up, but we can put more points towards this guy right here, and we could also do the same thing with Brandon Vernon, because Kentucky is going against him, is recruiting this kid pretty hard, but we do build quite a bit of a lead with Jazeer Nicholson though. Alright boys, so we tried our best to get Brandon Vernon to come to our school, man, but it's not going to be enough. Brandon Vernon is going to end up transferring to Kentucky, and that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, man, because that was a guy that was right in our backyard, and we could not get him, unfortunately. We are leading on Ben Conrad, though. He's a guard from Idaho, which that is a positive sign for us for sure. And then we do also have the lead on Connor Witters still. Jazeer Nicholson has his top 3 as well. We're very close to having him sign on the dotted line. And then Miles Turner, he's a 2-star outside linebacker. He's a transfer from UMass. We're also very close to signing him as well. We're in a battle with Old Dominion and Liberty for his services though. So we go back and take a look into the transfer portal to see if there's anyone that we want to try and grab, and we end up seeing Jake Jackson in here. He's a sophomore transfer from Maryland, and he only has an offer from Rutgers. Now, what he's really looking forward to is playing style, and we have that A+ grade when it comes to playing style. So even though we might be a little bit behind in terms of recruiting this kid that Rutgers is going after, I think we have a legitimate chance of getting him, so we're going to add him onto the board and see if we have any luck. Alright, so we completed a third week of off-season recruiting, and we do end up grabbing some more notable guys here on our board. Stephen Brents from Buford, Georgia, and is a strong safety. He is going to verbally commit to our team, man, and that's going to be a good backup for Porter Lindstrid. We also signed the 2-star outside linebacker Miles Turner, so we do end up getting the UMass transfer. Should provide some good depth for us on that outside linebacker core. Jazeer Nicholson is going to be a body for us at wide receiver. He's a 1-star from Reynoldsburg, Ohio as well. And then here's what we got going on in terms of other movements beyond that, as we're trying to improve ourselves here a little bit. Staying as a 1.5-star school, so you do love to see that, even though it was not that kind of season. So Jake Jackson, we actually do pull ahead of Jake Jackson, but I don't know if we're going to get him because Rutgers does have a higher prestige, so that could be something to monitor. Ben Conrad, however, does end up moving into the lead. We're the only team offering Ben Conrad. And then Soma Takamaka, the halfback from Calhoun, Georgia. Georgia's not going after him, and we're starting to build a sizable lead for the Calhoun, Georgia product as well, who's a solid 3-star player too. So in our final week of off-season recruiting, though, we do end up getting the Maryland transfer in Jake Jackson, originally hailing from Alexander, Virginia. We do also get the 2-star Johnny Chansey out of Alpena, Michigan. He's an outside linebacker. Connor Littris, a 2-star tackle, signs with the program. He's from Washington, Maryland. Soma Tamahaka is a running back. He's a 3-star guy from Calhoun, so we're excited about that particular recruitment as well. However, we will unfortunately miss out on Zach Oban, who is going to end up being someone that is going to be going to Arkansas. But we do also get significant improvements in terms of our coach that we can definitely utilize, and we'll check that out shortly. But first, I want to check out how we did on signing day, as not only do we finish with a reasonably well recruiting class, we signed the 67th ranked recruiting class in college football, which for a 1.5-star school, that's really not bad at all. Not only that, we end up signing the top class in the entire MAC. So we sign a better class than anyone else in college football, and a big reason for that is the quality of player that we ended up bringing in. While many of the other schools in our conference, some of those schools did end up bringing more players than we did. Northern Illinois, Akron, Miami, and Eastern Michigan were all able to sign 30-plus guys in the recruiting class. What we are at least able to accomplish, and Ball State also brought in 33 total players too, our quality of player is better than anyone else in the entire conference, and that should bode well for us. Maybe not next year because guys will need time to develop, but maybe 2 to 3 years down the road where we could become a serious player in the MAC and give ourselves an opportunity to really move up and be a part of that Big Ten someday. So we ended up signing a grand total of 28 players onto our team, and what I'm going to do is, for the guys that transferred in, Jake Jackson out of the University of Maryland, as well as Miles Turner, who transfers from UMass, I'm going to let them be because they're already current players. But the guys that are coming in from high school, though, I am actually going to give you guys the ability to rename them. So to be able to get a custom player in this series, how it's going to work is I'm going to have a template down in the pinned comment section for you guys to check out, and for you to be able to get a player, all you got to do is fill out that template for one of the 26 guys that you do end up seeing on your screen, and I will make sure to get them into this series. Now, if you want to have earlier access and more likely to be able to get the player that you want, I will say that I do give earlier access to folks that are in my Discord, as well as folks that are members of my YouTube channel. So if you want to be either of those things, you want to join the Discord or join the channel membership program, There's 2 tiers, one for $2 a month and $5 a month. You could definitely check that out. That's in my description. It is not by all means required for you to enjoy my content whatsoever, but it is an incentive that I give if you want to support the channel in a little bit more of a personal way. So can't wait to see what your guys' submissions are. I'll be looking down in the comments section for sure. And these are your players that you will be able to turn into custom recruits, and that will be revealed in the next episode when we're getting ready to start year number 2. So up next, we have our positional changes, and this is the first time that we get to take a look at some of these freshmen. Now, Ross John, it was suggested that he was more of a halfback, but we checked out him on a more personal level, and Ross John actually makes more sense being a fullback. And while he is more of a utility type player, he's going to be a 71 overall as a freshman, which I think it's going to be pretty cool to see. Ross John, not as good of a blocker, but is a more dynamic threat and could be more of a gadget player that we could use for our team in year number 2. He'll have to compete with Jackson Gregory for that starting fullback position. Still seems likely that Gregory would win that, but it's something to monitor, and we'll try to find a way to get Ross John onto the field. In terms of our other athletes that we ended up recruiting, we actually found Kyle Gaddis. Now, Kyle Gaddis actually seems like someone that could be dangerous, a matchup problem at the tight end position, because you got to think about it. He's going to be lined up against linebackers most of the time, and a 90 speed tight end, most linebackers cannot keep up with that. So while he has to work on his route running and just general awareness, Kyle Gaddis could certainly get some playing time right away. He'll at least be a tight end 2 behind Scott McClellar. And then for Ryan outside linebacker, the last athlete that we recruited was Larry Hasselbach. Larry Hasselbach is going to end up transitioning over to right outside linebacker, someone that I can certainly envision getting some playing time as well. Now, we'll have to see what Miles Turner does in the offseason if he puts in that work. He is coming in as a senior. He is a UMass transfer, someone that could be a bridge player per se. But I think for the future of the linebacker position, at least at right outside linebacker, Larry Hasselbach is 100% going to be the future. Now, real quick, I want to take a look at the offensive line because I did make some changes here. Could have an interesting battle here between George Everson, who we got as a JUCO, and Kyle Cork, who is a freshman that we got from the high school ranks, and both of them do have the mental ability of Road Dog. It's going to be an interesting battle to watch to see who we end up going with. Probably will lean towards George Everson because he is older, but Kyle Recruit can certainly make things very interesting. Not to mention Tyreek Williams is certainly not out of it either. At guard, I ended up moving Ben Conrad over to left guard because he was good enough to start on my offensive line. He does have that Road Dog mental ability as well. We moved him over from right guard. Center's probably going to be the weak link in my offensive line. It's going to likely be a battle between Keon Robinson III and Grant Hunt, although I did also end up moving Jermaine Houston from right guard. He actually does move up a couple of overalls from a 55 up to a 57. So while Jermaine Houston is not the favorite, he does have an outside shot to win the center job as well through spring training. Right guard, our best offensive lineman is likely going to be DeMarcus Perkins. And then for right tackle, we might have a true freshman starting at right. Actually, we'll have a true freshman start at right tackle. Marquise Bigums, he's a true freshman from Dayton, Ohio, but he does have the clear-headed mental ability, and he is 6'7", so he does have quite the wingspan. Not a lot is going to naturally get by him. Just really need to make sure that he really works on technique. Now, in terms of the defensive side of the ball, real quick, I wanted to take a look at how things are looking on the defensive side of the football. And overall, I like what I see. Right end, we're going to have a little bit of a battle here. Chandler Amore is going to be an early favorite, but John Decker IV and Ali McCray, I'm curious to see how they improve in the offseason training regimen. Defensive line, Deshaun Leaks and Logan McNichols will likely be your starters, with Cade Bloom getting in the rotation. Linebacking core, we're also looking at probably Tajay Cole starting again, with Nash Birthday being one of our best defensive players. Corner, we do have a lot of corners that we can work off of. We know about Xavier Pace. Really, who's going to be that third corner? Is it going to be Vladimir Kolensky, who's a sophomore? Or is it going to be this DeMarvin Holland, who's a freshman redshirt? Didn't get the chance to see him on the field last year because he's not as athletic, but could have an outside chance of winning that third corner. Dakota Mills is also someone to keep an eye on. Free safety, will likely see Nico Solomon start once again, but backup safety is going to be interesting as Kane Bojic is going to be a pretty solid player to watch out for, with Hunter Haynes and Kingsley Reese competing for that safety spot. If in at strong safety, we know Porter Lindstrid's going to be here, but it seems likely that Stephen Brents is going to be cemented as our second strong safety to back up Porter Lindstrid. We'll have a few years to develop him, which should be good. He'll have a heck of a ball player to really model his game off of. So to be honest with you, I have no idea how we pulled this off, but we move on into the next week and we get a ton of upgrades, right? So I end up putting a good chunk of those upgrade points that we had because we literally got 10 levels, which again, I don't know how we pulled it off. I did start really adding on to like the motivator perk a little bit more, and really putting primarily into, you know, again, the line of scrimmage. I want the lines of scrimmage, especially if like the fourth quarter and close games, I want our offensive line and defensive lines to have that additional spark to win. So that's where I put most of the upgrades in. I also put some more into tactician as well, where again I primarily focus on the line of scrimmage, but I did add some boost to all the other position groups that we do end up having as well. And then for recruiting, again, I did finally max out the receiving game, so we'll have increased starting interest from our receivers, but we did also have more of a boost from, you know, from running backs. We have more for quarterbacks, linebackers, secondary, and a little something for the specialists as well, especially considering we are going to need a punter when that time does officially come. However, with that officially said, we do get done with what we're looking at in terms of training results, and we do actually see a pretty significant jump as a team. We jump up to a 76 overall as a squad, so our team is going to be significantly better than what we saw in season number 1. So hopefully, in particular, that does help us out in terms of winning some more than the one game that we ended up winning. We'll just take a quick look at each individual position. So DJ Armstrong is going to remain your starting quarterback, but looks like JoJo Thompson had a bigger jump than Kyle Navarro. So we'll see if Carl Navarro ends up wanting to go into the transfer portal in the future. But JoJo Thompson, however, looks like he's going to be a freshman redshirt and going to be our backup quarterback as well. Very curious to see how JoJo Thompson is, because we didn't see him on the field last year, which is very interesting. Will Peoples, we know what he's going to be. He's going to be our main running back this upcoming season. Jackson Gregory does get a little bit of improvement, so he will be our primary fullback. But again, we're going to try to get Ross John in on the action. Receivers, our receivers looks like Javion Foreman's going to be our 1. Chris Gentry's going to be our 2. CJ Peaks will be our 3rd receiver. And then we'll likely see Scooter Page and Tanner Millam each get some time as that 4th receiver going into this season. Meanwhile, Scott McQuarrie jumps up to a 76, so he'll be our starting tight end. But we'll likely see some Maverick Bentley brought in as well. I'll have as the 3rd tight end, because I really want to see what we have in the tight end that we just brought in. Most important thing for me, though, is offensive line. Do like the improvements I initially see from our offensive line, with Andre Spanley able to get better than Tyreek Williams, which is good to see. Definitely need some improvements on the offensive line, and it seems like we did actually get it right. Eric Paulding's up to a 78. Grant Huff, who I was really concerned about in terms of offensive line, they jumped all the way up to a 74, and oh baby, did we really need that kind of improvement. I'm so glad that we did. Jermaine Houston jumps up to a 71 too, so I love that. DeMarcus Perkins is up to a 78. And then it looks like our weak side is going to be right tackle, but I do like our offensive line a lot better than last year. Defensively, looking at the defensive side of the ball, Joshua Townsend will be the cemented starter at the first defensive end position. And then John Decker, the fourth, will likely be there as our starting defensive lineman with a rotation of Allie McRae and Ellis Berry. Defensive tackle, I did say that Deshaun Weeks and Cade, well, no, did Cade Bloom, was he the second defensive tackle? He might have been, but definitely much improved. Should have a decent stable of defensive linemen behind him, though, so gives us plenty of options there. Meanwhile, for outside linebacker, Tajay Coles is there as a 77. Nash Burte gets up to an 81. And then at right outside linebacker, Draymond Gates is a 71 overall. So that true freshman that we brought in could see some early playing time as well. For corner, Xavier Wilson gets up to above an 80 as a senior, so you love to see that. But Vladimir Kolensky is going to fall behind here a little bit. He's going to be our fifth corner. He's not going to see as much playing time as he saw last year. And maybe that might be for the best because we got a huge improvement from Malik Moon. At free safety, Nico Solomon will still be the starter, but a much tighter race here. Probably will let Hunter Haynes be the backup, followed by Kingsley Reese. Zaire Wilson, unfortunately didn't really improve. And then Porter Winstrid jumps up 1 overall. He gets to an 82, and Chris Ellinger gets to a 64. And then Tommy Wright wasn't much better. He's now a 68. Punter Matthew York is going to be one of the best players on the team. He's an 80 overall. But that being said, I really like this team, and I think we're going to have much more success than what we experienced in year number 1 because of the improvements that we see on your screen. But now we get to a point where we have some really difficult decisions that we need to make from a roster management standpoint, because we have 98 people on this roster right now and we can only have 85. So how I did this with a cult of multiple things. So I was looking for upperclassmen that aren't even going to be like in the free deep, as well as just generally looking at who's our worst overall players without cutting any custom players, right? So with that being said, we took a look around and we're going to start out with Cameron Teague. Cameron Teague is going to be listed as a 4-string player, and I just don't see him really having an impact on our team any longer. So we are going to ask Cameron Teague to enter the transfer portal. We then look over to see what we have in terms of tight ends depth, and we have plenty of tight ends, right? So I'm going to first ask Cole Smith to go. He's a 46 overall. He's not going to see the field. It's not going to happen. However, that is the only tight end that I could cut, which is good because I was really eyeing Alex Gunderson as well. I was planning on cutting him, but because of having a similar number of tight ends, gotta have a minimum number. That number is 6. Alex Gunderson's gonna be able to stay on this team for at least another year. At left tackle, listen, he's not gonna beat out George Everson. He's not gonna beat out Kyra Creek at either. Andrew Spanley is gonna be our starter, obviously. So Tyreek Williams, he's here as an upperclassman. He's gonna be a 4th-string player, right? So we're gonna ask Tyreek Williams to enter the transfer portal. And then after that, we get to our linebacking core. We know that Draymond Green Gates is going to be our starter. Larry Hackleback will get a similar amount of playing time, but we are going to really take a look at Jaquez Blanks. Blanks is really not going to make much of an impact for our team this year, so we are going to have Blanks be encouraged to enter the transfer portal. So after that, we really take a look at, okay, who's are the worst players on our team at this point that isn't our custom guys. So Tavion Grant is going to be another one that will be encouraged to be transferred. The same will also be done for Damian Green. Chris Ellinger, who is a strong safety, he's going to end up being encouraged to hit the transfer portal as well. Keon Robertson III, who didn't really improve very much in the offseason at all, we're cutting him. Malachi Samuels, who's a freshman redshirt at the defensive tackle position, will also be encouraged. Doug Barlow will not make the final 85-man roster himself. Dante O'Neal is someone as a true freshman, never really saw the field, and have a couple of customs at the quarterback position anyway, so we're going to have Dante O'Neal go ahead and answer that transfer portal for us as well. And it leaves us with two guys that we would be left to cut. I'm going to cut Nick Forsmith, and Dakota Mills will be our final two cuts because James Couch Smith is our freshman and these guys are sophomores, so they don't have as much time to develop as James Couch Smith. So those are going to be the final two cuts. So we made it through all of that work in the offseason, and it makes me wonder, what is our schedule going to be like when we get ready to go for year number 2? Now, for the start of year number 2, we are going to open things up against the Miami Hurricanes. Miami Hurricanes are a good ACC team, finishing 8-5 in a power conference. Going to be a good early season test for us. And then all of these other games that we have in the non-conference are certainly winnable. We are hosting Rocket City, so that's what these guys represent. FCS East. That's the Rocket City Rocket Men from Not the Expert. Toledo, we are going to continue the battle of I-75, even though we are in different conferences for this season as well. And then we'll wrap things up with going on the road to take on UMass. And then beyond that, we are going to start MAC play. We're going to open up against Western Michigan, then take on Michigan State on the road. They got relegated from the Big Ten. They're now here in the MAC. Central Michigan and Kent State will be home games for us this season, whereas we'll take on Miami on the road, where they're going to be looking for revenge for us keeping them out of bowl season last year. And then we'll finish things up with Ball State at home. That's going to be our senior day. And then finishing the year off with Akron and Buffalo on our schedule to finish up year number 2. And then with any luck, we'll have a little bit of postseason action that we'll be able to enjoy here in year number 2. But just taking a look at how things are going to stack in the MAC looking into year number 2. So for us, we are looking at being a 76 overall, 76 offense, and a 77 defense. So we improved by a good amount, actually, and I love to see that. Michigan State looks like they're probably going to be the favorites to win the MAC. They were recently relegated from the Big Ten. They're here in the MAC now. And then I'm taking a look at some of these other teams that are in our conference, and the more that I look around the Big Ten, or not the Big Ten, but the MAC, the more that I feel like, hey, we have a legitimate shot of making it to the MAC championship game just from how much we improved from last year now to this season. That certainly is a realistic expectation, and I really want us to try and at least make it to a bowl game. So bowl game, I think, is the minimum of what we want to accomplish here in year number 1, or not year number 1, but year number 2. But if we can be in the mix for a MAC championship game, I think that'll be a huge step in the right direction as we're continuing to build our program. It would be a heck of a turnaround if we could actually accomplish that. And to really foot stomp this need and desire for Michigan State to win the MAC, look at all of these first team guys that Michigan State has. They practically, with a few exceptions here or there, so I know Central Michigan does have a few guys in there, and I think Miami did have somebody else in there as well. Michigan State's nearly entire starting lineup is going to be in here in this first team All-MAC list, with a few exceptions. So Michigan State is going to be a heavy favorite to win the MAC and return back to the Big Ten. However, for us, we do have a couple of guys here that did make it onto the second team list. DJ Armstrong got a surprising nominee, and I think they're saying that DJ Armstrong is going to really have a breakout campaign, and the same could be said for Will Peoples. It does help that we do have a better offensive line to be able to back it up, as well as we have a mix of a few players in here as well. A couple other players did end up making this list though. Tajay Coles is here, the senior power rusher, does get a second team preseason nom. One of your guys is customs on the defensive side of the ball in Porter Winstrid makes it onto this second team all preseason MAC list. And then to wrap things up, we got Matthew York a senior punter who does make it. So we end up with 5 guys on the preseason all-conference list, which shows that, hey, we got a good core of guys. And the crazy thing is, 3 of these 5 guys that made it onto this preseason list, they're not seniors. They're actually underclassmen. So we have a chance to really have a foundation to build ourselves here in the future. But that's about going to do it here as we get ready to gear up for another season of Bluffton Tech football. Next episode, we will start year number 2. We might either jump right into gameplay or do a little bit more of a deeper dive season preview, take a real close look at what your custom guys are, as well as what we are looking at in terms of our initial recruiting board for this upcoming season. But should be very exciting. I am so ecstatic to get year number 2 started. We should be a much better team than what we saw last year. And then also to top it off as well, we're a much better team than where we were in year number 1. And I think we have a real chance to be competitive here in year number 2. So very excited to get things going here in the next episode. And I hope you enjoyed this offseason recap. If you have, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new to the channel. And with that being said, I'll get things started here. Season number 2 coming very soon. But with that being said, this is John J Gaming on the mic signing off. But hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.